we can go through this, but I'm not gonna go through page by page unless you have questions.
Quick question.
Sure.
What are the plans with the additional $2.5 million of property valuation? I didn't see that in your numbers. What are you gonna do with those?
Well, the property valuation, that's nice, but the new legislation, it's really hard to interpret exactly how that's going to affect us. Because we're capped at nine, I think the GDP, or the income, excuse me, the inflation rate growth is gonna cap those things to 13% and 20%. So we won't get the full benefit of the $2.5 million property valuation. We won't get that. Also, we
The public doesn't know that.
so I try to state it as clearly as I can, but when you're talking millage and property values, it doesn't resonate with people who don't work in finance. But I have said we're gonna lose revenue. My forecast, I said over the next 4 years, not this year, but 4 years after that, we will lose $11 million.
And that's what I was asking, was that, those numbers included?
Yeah, well, as best I can, because the implementation of new tax laws are still being figured out, as you probably know. But anyway.
So that revenue of 2.5 was part of the 38 million that you projected for 26?
The 38 million, because it's.
Last year I asked that
I know,
question.
because
You
of-
didn't put any estimate in for the reval, so I'm asking now, you got 26 here.
Yeah, because of transfers, that $3.8 million transfer just above the 38 million, the state changed the uniform school accounting system. 016 is where we put our emergency funds. This year, they said, nope, don't use the 016 fund anymore. It should all go in a general fund. So for me to take what we had in the 016 fund and move it into the general fund, I had to transfer. So that 3.8 million isn't revenue, it's a transfer from a general fund account into the general fund. It's accounting that I'm required to do, but it's phantom, it's not really transfer. Not
So
really
from that, I gather you did not put 2.5 million in that you're gonna get from the revaluation?
In this year,
Yeah, 26.
actually, I have
You have-
additional funds up above, the $18 million of property tax revenue, you see the increase in the previous year, 16 million?
Yeah,
There's your increase.
okay. All right.
Now, I think we all know that 18 million isn't gonna happen.
Now that's 2 million, you're gonna get 2.5 million.
Well, the line below, the property, public utility personal property tax, there's an increase there, also in the state share of local property taxes, because it's all split up in different buckets. There's a small increase there of a couple $100,000. But you'll see in future years, I have significantly less money, and as our emergency levy falls off at the end of calendar year, our fiscal year 28, we continue to lose revenue.
Can we drill down into those figures a little bit more?
Sure.
So, looking at your total revenues, and I was using not your new sheet, but it looks like it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's
to what we had
almost the same,
before.
but there's
And
a tweak in there too.
And that's fairly close to your statement of fund activity too.
Right.
So I may be off just a little bit, but, you know, you're going back to 24, you had 30 million in total revenues, 25, you had 33. It was interesting, I went back to your statement of funds from 25, and your estimate that year was 27 million. You actually ended up with 33. You know, that's a 18%, $5 million difference.
Part of the revenue stream in 25, there was a shift. I came in August of 24. We had some money that was sitting in an operating bank account earning 0 interest. I moved 27 million out of that account into Star, Ohio. Our interest rates went up, our interest earnings went up by over $1 million in 25 alone, simply from a cash management standpoint of investing it instead of letting it sit into an empty account. Not an
So
empty account,
that's
but
1 million out of the 5 million difference.
Right.
Okay, you didn't project that.
I didn't project the 5 million.
Well, the interest earnings.
So the interest earnings I projected, but the other money, and as far as my fall forecast, now what, are you talking projected in 25, right?
Yeah, I'm just,
Okay,
what you
so in
gave us last
25,
year and what
I
you really
just
come out
started
to.
with the district in August of 24.
Okay.
I was looking at revenue streams. There were some increases that I didn't realize were coming. I'm
Okay.
just getting my myself familiar with how the
Is it-
funds roll.
Is it fair to say that the numbers indicate that there was an undervaluation of anticipated or forecasted?
Previous to my arrival, possibly.
No,
I
I'm
don't know
asking
that.
between 24, I'm asking based on the numbers that we had, that you projected in 25, with the actuals that you got, that you're now reporting in 26, there was an underestimation of those increased revenues. You've accounted for a million or so, and I'm asking, I'm not saying that anyone did anything nefarious, I'm simply asking that the numbers that you posted for us to review in 25, and here we are in 26, and we're looking where you projected 3 million, we had 8. I'm simply asking whether or not, because my follow-up question to that, because I'm not trying to fool anybody, my question is, why was that so dramatically underestimated?
Because of time limitations, I would like to sit down and talk exactly what you're referring to and when it was projected. I'm not sure I projected, the previous treasurer projected, or when.
That's what the
But
numbers
I'd
were.
like-
Yes,
I
sir.
know, but I'd like to, like, what we had here in 25 versus what our actuals were in 25, I'd have to sit down and go over exactly where your concern is, because I projected what I knew at the time, and here's the thing about projections, I will tell you. What I projected in September, December, March, they change, they adjust. Special ed director comes to me and says, I got a couple of new kids with high needs, I need $200,000 more, things like that happen. But as far as the revenue streams, I was getting familiar with revenue streams my first year with the district and how they're calculated. So I can't say, I may have not projected exactly what the revenue streams were. I was looking at last year's revenue streams, knowing that we didn't have any reappraisals, wondering, okay, we should be about the same, a little bit more with new construction. I didn't anticipate a big increase.
Okay.
I understand treasurer's changing everything, so I get your point there. I'm just looking, and I look back to 24 also and 23, and the point that Forrest just made is true. I mean, it looks like a continual underestimation of revenue, okay?
If you go back.
And I know you can't be accurate.
I wasn't here tonight.
I know you can't be accurate, but I mean, just like last year, 5 million off, 18%. That's substantial to me, you know, and I'm a real conservative treasurer, so I try to, you know, you wanna overestimate your revenues, but, you know, it just makes me wonder about your further estimates of next year being 37,000 and then dropping off to 32,000, you know? Yeah, 30, actually, I said
Millions,
thousands,
I-
37
those
million,
thousands.
down to 32.
We got a different conversation.
37 million down to 32 million in 27.
Okay, you're looking at
so-
expenses.
No, here's total revenue, I'm taking it right off your statement of fund activity.
Well,
You've got
I'm sorry,
projected
I'm
in
looking at my,
26, well, it's gonna be about the same on this other sheet too. Your total revenues here, let's see, you forecast 38 and 26 and 31 million and 27. On this sheet, it's 37 million and then 30 million and 27. I am not sure what the drop is, but how reliable are those?
which year are you talking about the drop in?
Okay, well, the 26, you got projected at 38 million,
Okay,
total revenue.
right.
And then the next year in 27, on this sheet, you got 31 million, okay? And that's pretty close to your statement of funds, which is 37 million and dropping to 30 million in 26 to 27.
I'm still not on what page you're on.
Okay.
Could you point
Well,
out?
you got this
You're
one.
looking at my actual.
Yeah, I'm looking at your actual,
Right here,
yeah.
okay.
First page.
And it's this total revenue line right here.
Okay,
And you got, under 26, you got 38 million.
right,
And the 27, you got 31 million.
got it.
And then you got dropping to 30 and 30 and 30. Okay, but I'm not looking way out 5 years, but that's where I'm looking.
Okay, the 38 million, as I explained, there's 3.8 million extra just simply because of the transfer. There's also,
So you transferred money from other, I
From
forget
the-
which fund.
from the 016 emergency levy, which is general fund in the accounting system,
Mhm.
but it went away. I transferred out of 016 into 01. It's money that was already in the general fund.
Okay.
It's family. As far as the money's coming to revenue dropping down, I'm trying to interpret the new legislation and how it impacts me. I didn't take the high road, I didn't take the low road, I took somewhere in the middle, talking to other treasurers and other consultants on what to expect. I capped certain revenues. I know that my emergency levies going into 20 floor. I try to calculate exactly where I'm going to end up on my revenues, but I'm still looking for guidance from the state, from the
Okay,
county.
sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So
I understand your
I gave
frustration.
my best effort on calculating our revenues, and I think you're gonna hear the same from the treasurer. In fact, some treasurers were kicking around the idea like, until we know better, I'm gonna keep the same projections I had back in fall.
Let me ask what I consider to be a rather academic question.
Sure.
Why are we here?
Well,
What is this board, what is your understanding of what this board's role is?
you're to look at my tax budget, and you're to basically approve or not what we have projected going forward.
I answered that question differently, okay, because I'm not the treasurer. I looked at last year as the opportunity to tell another body of people, and important government officials, the great work we do in our schools.
Well,
This opportunity, from what you guys shared with me last year, was something that has always been available, but not used.
right, and for many years, as we all know, for many years, this was not done.
Right.
It was sort of, I hate to use the term rubber stamp, but everybody understands what I mean when I say it, okay? This board has basically a review authority with the authority to reduce millage. If it's determined that there are excess funds. Can we all generally agree with that?
No, we know that.
Okay. My point being, is it not fair to assume that you would underestimate numbers in order to ensure that there was a bleaker outlook on the township, or excuse me, on the school district, rather than an actual portrayal of the real finances?
Can I?
And I'm simply at, well, I would like to have an answer to my question.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that, but at the same time, I take my job very seriously.
I don't doubt that.
I would not provide information that's not accurate as best as I can calculate.
There's an $8 million adjustment on projections from one year to the next. Now, I'm sorry, that I don't consider $8 million deviation to be accurate, and I don't think that we have at this juncture heard a good reason as to why that
Like I said,
projection
I would like,
was.
instead of in front of a crowd of people, if we could sit down and go over exactly where you're saying $8 million is, $8 million difference on projection. If you're referring to the $3.8 million I transferred in, there's half of it right there.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not, yes, sir. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm certainly not disagreeing with you. I'm simply trying to follow up on the specifics of the question. And that's why I am not trying to hold your feet to the fire, and I don't care whether we're in a public meeting. I don't care whether it's in a private discussion. The questions are gonna be the same.
I get it, but the thing is, you're referring to something that maybe I'm not catching exactly what line you're talking about. I don't wanna misspeak. I'm just
John, you
trying
wanna-
to
Yeah,
answer
I
the
have a couple
question.
more questions.
Sure.
So, looking at the expenses,
Are
Okay.
you on this, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and again, I did some calculation off the the statement of fund activity, which is really, really close.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's not exact, but, which I'm not sure I understand, the two are different, but, so in 24, you had total expenditures of about 24.9 million. And then the next year, in 25 here, this last year, you had that large 59 million. Can you explain that a little bit more? Was that?
Yes. Two different factors. The one being the transfer of $32 million.
That's what I thought it was.
There's the big chunk, but there's a little bit more too. Because if you look above, under just expenditures, not the other financing uses, we jumped from almost 25 million one year to over 27 million next year. That increase in expenses is due to our 003 money, like permanent improvement. and our sales tax money were not being used in the way that I feel they should have been used. They were used for more maintenance dollars and taking care of leases and things like that. Those are not in the general fund. And I looked at that and I go, that needs to be in the general fund. So I moved the expenses that were being used in the 071 and the 003 into the general fund, thereby increasing the expenses here. That freed up 071 and 003 money to do capital projects, a la the $2.5 million worth of capital projects last summer. That, we had the capital projects planned, but we need to make sure the capital project dollars weren't being spent on other things. So the increase in expenses is because of a shift in accounting policy, basically.
Okay. Yeah, 59, you take out 32 million for the transfer, you got 27 million left. And yet for 26, you've got 10 more million than that projected, 37 million, which is more than what you normally spent 27 and 24 in the last 2
Okay,
years.
the transfer up above, that $3.8 million,
Mhm.
that came out of 016, down below, under other financing uses, at 6.3 million,
Mhm.
3.8 million of that is a transfer out of the 016 and up above the transfer in. Like I said, it's a wash. It's more confusing than it is helpful, but that's what I'm required to do. The rest of that funding is the 3.2 million shown on this sheet here, transferred into
Right,
the account,
okay.
into the 070 account.
And that went into 070 account, is that your improvement account?
Capital
Yeah,
project.
capital
It's
project.
one of the capital projects, but it's the one we set up for the high school construction.
So let me go back and just ask a general question. So you're moving this money, which it looks like you have built up over several years. You have excess money from revenue versus, and then subtracting expenses out. It looks like, if you look at your ending cash balance, you were up to 33 million in ending cash balance. A reserve,
Yes.
it is, it's a reserve, and that was pretty consistent along the years, you kept increasing, so.
From
what that
2015
tells
through
me-
2024, there was a long period of the.
Yeah, what it tells me is it was a continual, here's your revenue, and your lower expenses allowed you to accumulate this reserve, which, if you look at it, 33 million in reserve, when you had 24 million in expenses in 24, that's 133% of your expenses in reserves, and you put it towards doing your building,
In high school.
new building repairs, all that. Yet, the last levy was an improvement levy, and it went down, what was the,
The last levy was a construction levy.
oh,
The
construction
last
levy,
operation
okay,
levy
operation.
is detailed, that's the one that runs out in 27. So the recent failures have all been construction.
Okay. And it wasn't close, I don't think. I remember.
Certainly,
2 to 1?
yeah, so we were trending better. It's unfortunate, but the normal path, right, is to continually ask, whether it's operational or construction, right? And as we were doing that, we were modifying the plan, talking to the community, but we were trending, thinking that we were going to get there in the normal procedure, so to speak. And then the May result was a significant step backwards. So yeah, the May result, and that led us to say we still have this facility item. We were absolute benefactor, the district, when I say we, I don't mean Mark and I, but the district was absolute benefactors for being on the 20 mil floor. There's no doubt about that. We are a prototype example of a school district that benefited by the 20 mil floor. What I have been told is historically, the school board, the treasurers, the superintendents that led the district, historically were ultra conservative in saving money because of the history of operational failures. So they were programmed just to be conservative. I appreciated your comment about being a conservative treasurer. I've never met one who's not. Okay? I would love to find one in my career who's not, because I can do some things from a superintendent perspective very different. But I would say that there was a plan by former treasurers, superintendents, and board of education to be very conservative with money, which built up a reserve. From the get-go, the plans always included that some aspect of that funding would offset the cost for the community if they pass an operate or a bond issue. So,
Last one that was passed was an emergency levy, right?
It was a renewal actually in 2016 for 10 more years.
yeah, and that's why, and that comes off the books in 27.
Right, but that helps you generate the revenue you did to be able to save the
Oh, yeah,
$6
that
million.
was definitely part of
And I
it.
go back to the vote on you had 3 levies, right, that went down. So isn't that your voter constituency telling you they don't want
Well,
to do this building and
It
everything?
may be, but it may not be, because they simply voted against new taxes. When we talked about a new plan, we talked about the ability to build a high school without new taxes. We did it in front of the Alumni Association, we got applause all around the room, and a very large room. When we did it in our town hall meeting, we talked about a plan to build without new taxes. Once again, applause from the people who attended the meeting, and at the board meeting when it was approved, it was a full room, and once again, more applause. So what I read into that is, they don't wanna pay more taxes, but they do see the need for a new school.
I also had the
But you gotta
reality,
fund it some way, and
Sure,
it's
you're
through
right.
taxes.
and
Well, it is, but not new taxes.
Taxpayers said no in a big way.
they did, and then the other reality is what I shared in my opening comments, the day after the May levy went down, right, for the 3rd time and multiple times before me, we still had the reality of a junior high school that is not functional in a very short amount of time. We still have that reality. I'm still putting students in a school projected that we don't have an ability to improve, right? So we come together and say, is there something we can do with this money that we have saved, with the system that we have used to improve the situation for our students and our staff and our community? So that's what we talked to the board about, that's what we brought to the community, that's what we had open board meetings on, that's what we did, right? And the Board of Education made the decision to move forward with the plan. That's it, that's it.
You did have the option, didn't take it, I understand why, but you did have the option of reducing your millage and giving some of that money back to the taxpayers too.
And would we have been able, and then, there's no answer to this, but would we have been able to do what we are doing from a capital improvement facility plan to?
I understand why you
Sure,
pull the money and
sure.
where it's going, but I also see that your voters don't seem to be towing the same thought on that.
And that's
And
why-
what I see is, again, these large reserves of over 100% of your expenses, but, it's not our job to go back to those years, but, so let me bring something else up. All right, so this year's a revaluation year, and you're one of 5 out of 7 districts that are underneath the 20-month floor. And that's the elephant in the room. And that's what the legislators are really trying to tackle. I'm not sure how effectively, but, that started clear back in 1976. They were indexed to inflation or anything, but anyways, from what the estimates we got for all the 5 school districts that are going to get extra revenue from the revaluation of homes last year, 2025, it was mandated by the state auditor to do, you're gonna get about 2.5 million. Correct? I think, Kristen, you gave us those figures, okay.
And
So
we're
that's
gonna
money
lose our-
above the levies.
Okay, we're gonna lose our emergency levy we know 2 years from now, which if we receive
We're not
that,
talking
say
about,
there-
excuse me, we're talking about now.
I know, but
Okay, so because 2 years from now, we may be having a completely different conversation, because there may be no property taxes. And we're gonna have a different conversation at that point. So let's talk about now, not what could happen at the end of that levy. Because between then and now, you may be able to get another emergency levy extension. There may be things that can be done. So let's just stick with what we're talking about right now.
okay, we saw a little bit of bump coming up, we knew there's a revenue going away, we thought we don't need to redo that if we get that way. That's what I thought was.
Okay.
Sorry.
Again, being conservative and saying, okay, I see something that's gonna end a revenue stream, emergency levy. But that's why we have emergency levies too, is it's supposed to get you over the hump, and then you go out for a regular levy. But we've gotten into this pattern over the many years since 1976, I think, of, doing emergency levies and different ones that do not count in that calculation for the, under the floor. And the 5 school districts that are under the 2004 are getting this additional revenue, which is really non-voted levy money, you know, the way I look at it, okay? Can you use it? I'm sure you can in different ways. I think with the state, looking at all these new laws that we were tracking this last year, the ones that passed, are trying to do is they want to see every 3 years when the auditor gets these values increased, and he's forced by law to do it by to market. So whatever your homes are selling for right now, that's it. That's got nothing to do, there's no relationship with the home value and the expenses of the school. And so, I'm not trying to philosophize, on this, but what the state's trying to do is cap those increases every 3 years to inflation. That's what I see, and that's what you guys probably know too, watching this stuff.
My understanding is there are not going to be any new legislative efforts between now and November.
Yeah, that's what I hear too.
That's the word I got this
We
past
got
week.
what passed in those 4
Right,
bills.
and that's all,
it.
that's all there's gonna be until at least November.
So here, this is the way I look at that 2.5, or one way to look at it is, okay, you're getting 2.5 million extra revenue, all right? If we even index that to CPI, okay? I went back and got the CPI consumer index, and for those 3 years, it was 2.6, 2.9, 4.1 on the last 3 years, so it's an average of 3.2. And if you took that average, you took those 3, you know, and applied that, out of that 2.5 million, you know, you'd still have